Welcome to Heart the Matter with Sonya on WYTV7, Charlotte, North Carolina. I'm located in Nashville, Tennessee, and I'm very excited that you joined us this evening. Always want to thank our listeners for being a part of the broadcast. And remember, you can reach me at Heart of the Matter, WYTV7 @gmail.com. Love hearing from you, love sending in those prayer requests, and so we're very thankful that you've joined us this evening. I have to tell you, I'm really excited about our guests tonight. We actually have two special guests with us, and grew up with Ken Blanton. They actually went to high school with me and have watched his daughter Hannah grow up over the years, so I'm just very, very excited about them joining us tonight. I want to tell you a little bit about Ken first. Again, his name is Ken Blanton. He's a retired school teacher, and he's been a part of several mission trips that he'll be sharing with us this evening. Also, he is actively involved in church outreach activities, actually helps feed the homeless, and is a part of the warming program during the winter months for the homeless as well. And he's the father of two children, James and Hannah. So I'm very thankful to have Mr. Ken Blanton with us this evening. Welcome, Ken. And I want to share a little bit about Hannah Blanton, his daughter. Again, very proud of her and the things that she's accomplished in her young life. And so she's currently in her second year of college, and she's actually made several mission trips as well and been a part of a local ministry or mission project for 6 years in Northwest Arkansas. And she's worked in a daycare, worked with mainly the 2-year-olds, but has been a part of all the different ages of children as well. So welcome, Ken and Hannah. Glad to have you both this evening.
So good to be here.
Thank you.
Great, great. And I want to get started. If you would just tell us, what was your first mission trip to Guatemala, and maybe how many times have you returned? Would you share a little bit about that with us?
Our first trip was in 2014. We went from Searcy, and we returned the next summer. We missed last summer, and then our most current trip was just a few weeks ago. So we've made 3 trips in the last 4 years.
Wow, that's great. Now, how did your first trip to Guatemala come about? What inspired you to be a part of that?
There was a group here at the church, some parents and that wanted a family mission trip to get together. They got together and started talking about what they wanted to do and what we wanted to do, and we immediately jumped on with no hesitation. Began to find out more information. We all grouped together and prayed about it, and it just worked out perfectly. We researched where we wanted to go and who we wanted to go with. Guatemala was laid on our hearts, and so it just worked out exactly the way God wanted it to. Through a ministry called Next Step Ministries, and so they worked with us, and God definitely laid it out to go there.
Well, I tell you, that's just awesome. I can remember the first time my son wanted to go on a mission trip, and he was a part of a youth ministry there in Damascus, Arkansas. And so very exciting time. You know, you have to go through, trying to raise funds, because a lot of people don't realize that sometimes it's very costly even for the people going, and you have to do things, for fundraisers. And I believe he was gone for 13 days. So I totally understand about that being laid on your heart and how that project comes about. And what actually, after that first trip, I know you said you've been more than once, and what made you want to return? Was there something that just struck your heart that made you want to return?
Well, I think after that first trip, you make connections with the people there. You see their love for God, and you see their living conditions, and there's no doubt after that first trip that we wanted to go back. We wanted it to be a continuing mission, and so it has been, and we certainly plan on going back. We don't think that this was our last trip.
That's awesome. I tell you, what other mission trips have you been part of? And do you currently have a project right now that you're involved with?
Well, Hannah's and my first trip was actually to Northwest Arkansas, to Springdale. Uh, I've been the last 7 years. Hannah's been the last. Well, she missed last year, but she's made 6 trips, and the mission there was mainly build wheelchair ramps for the handicapped in Northwest Arkansas. And I'd actually been before that. I had been just outside Lima, Peru, for a couple of trips. The first one was about 11 summers ago, and you're in the initial planning stage right now, uh, and going back to Peru hopefully next summer. 9 years ago, we established a feeding ministry down there, and we after we established it, we've continued to fund that feeding ministry for. So we're looking forward to that trip as well in the near future.
All right. Well, that's great. I didn't realize that you had been so many different places. Now, when you mentioned the wheelchair ministry in Northwest Arkansas, you actually go in and build those at different facilities, homes. What type of area did you build the wheelchairs?
Those wheelchair ramps were built at private residences. We hooked up with the church out in Springdale, and they actually work probably 11 months out of the year in the planning of the wheelchair ramps. They work with different agencies in Northwest Arkansas to come up with the places that we build those ramps. We go up Sunday, Monday morning we start the ramp, and by Friday afternoon when we leave, we've got the wheelchair ramp built. This past summer, we built 4 ramps. About 200 kids are involved. We camp out at the church there, sleep on mats, and just have a great time.
Wow, that's amazing that many people come together, and I love that they actually research those projects. And I know that's a big undertaking, because I can remember when we had to build a wheelchair ramp for my mom. And so I tell you, I really appreciate that, having been through some of that and knowing what it takes. So I know that can be a lot of hard work putting that together. So thank you both for being a part of that. And I wondered if there was maybe a turning point in your life. Sometimes people feel like a specific time that they can remember when God laid something on their heart. Do you recall that, or just when you felt really moved to be a part of these missions?
I remember them talking about, mission out of country mission trips when I was younger. And I did feel led to go, but I was under the age limit. But I always did listen and want to be involved. I was quite a bit younger when my dad went to Peru. If I would have, though, I thought it was so awesome when he came back. But I did know as soon as I reached the age limit and mission trips were brought up, I did feel like it was laid on my heart. It had always been in the back of my mind, but I just wasn't able to go yet. And so I did feel like as soon as it was brought up, I was ready to go, and I would jump on, and I didn't really have any hesitations, because I felt like God just gave me a peace about it, and I had never been out of the country, and so it was a cool feeling. I wasn't worried, but I really had never gone anywhere, so it was awesome when we first started to go to Guatemala.
It's interesting, Sonya. My son James, this past summer was the first summer that he had not been to the local mission project in Northwest Arkansas. But I remember it only took him 5 years of going himself, and he would come home at the end of that week, and he'd say, "Dad, you got to go." And so that's really what, after 5 years of saying no, it's like, yeah, I've got to go. So that's really where that started.
Well, Ken, I tell you, I can definitely identify with that. And it's amazing how our children can help us do the things maybe that we didn't even realize we were called to do. And they say out of the mouth of babes. And so I think God uses our children sometimes to call us into ministry as well. So, thank you so much for answering that call, that God really called you through your son to let you know that you needed to be there and be a part of that. And Hannah, I tell you, at a young age, it's just amazing that you felt that call as well. And I can remember my son, kind of like you, he was 14 or 15 years old, and we actually were able to, you may have heard me talk about it on previous broadcasts, we actually were able to go over into Acuna, Mexico, just briefly. So, but like you said, you have to be, a certain age before you can go into some of those third world countries. And so, I want to talk a little bit about your work day in Guatemala. What did that typically consist of?
We began the day with breakfast at the hotel. We grouped up. We did morning stretches and woke up as a whole group, and then we split out onto the buses, and we're taken to our work site. Once we got to the work site, we immediately started in. There was we mixed concrete, we hauled buckets of sand, we sifted sand, dirt. There was a ton of stuff to do. So the day at the work site was always interesting. Every day you got there, you didn't know what to expect. We laid blocks, and just anywhere that you were needed, everyone helped everybody. But although the work was very important, probably what was the most important was building a relationship with the family. So anytime I was able to, not language barrier, so we would have to get a translator, or even just being with them or whatever, just communicating with the family and trying to build a relationship with them was the most important, and just getting life. And one of the issues we kind of faced that sometimes was the rain. It rained some days, but it turned out to be a blessing. We actually stood under the family and learned more about the family during the rainy time than we had in the working time. So, the rain might have seemed like an inconvenience, but really got that time to build relationships with the family. Had some very good conversations, and that was one of the most memorable times, was staying out of the rain, but talking to the family and learning more about life.
Wow, that's just amazing. Sometimes we think what is a hindrance actually pushes it forward. And I think that's great that you shared about that. We don't think about that sometimes. And so I agree with you. I think that actual experience and the relationships, that's some of the most important part. And I know you mentioned, the things that you would do during the workday. Now, what actually were you able to do outside of that work site?
Something else, we worshiped at night together, but as a group, some people split out. We did some home visits. There were people that went out and talked to families. We actually connect with the church there. So we, this summer, actually, they mostly painted, but actually when we first started, our first summer, the church that we were connected with was just a tin building with dirt floors and just not much of anything, but they were very grateful for that. But we had the privilege to build onto it and add on every single summer. And so going at the end of the summer and actually missing last year, we saw a huge difference. So the first year they built like just the cement walls around the tin. So the first year was just, stabilizing it and putting concrete floors. They added on classrooms, like Sunday classrooms. They added on bathrooms, and then they actually added on a second story for more classrooms and more space. So just seeing that add on every year was a huge thing. So we had a part in the church, home visits, and we were all connected with an orphanage there. So we really relationship with those kids there. We got to go back, and I remember seeing kids, and they've grown up so much. You don't realize it's gone that long, and then you see how much they've grown up. Special. So we're at the house build, but because there were so many of us, we're split, among many different work sites. throughout the town, and reached a lot of people.
That's just amazing that you were able to go back each year and see some of the same people that you worked with and see the progress. And, here we're so privileged. We don't think about, the possibility of not having a building to worship in. And so when you look at the dirt floors, the concrete, things that actually the hard physical work that you go, sometimes people just think you go and you're out and you're ministering just to the people and relationships, but actually there's a lot of work, physical work sometimes that goes into that. So thank you so much for, all you've accomplished through that. And I tell you, I'm excited just hearing about it. And I can remember, on our mission trip, we did, some painting, some of the putty, those types of things. And so I think we're so, again, privileged here that sometimes we just don't realize the conditions, that people live in. Now, I know that you were traveling with several people. About how many people were you traveling with? And, what type of projects and things with Next Step Ministries were they involved in as well?
We traveled with 39 people from Arkansas. And when we got there, the whole group totaled 73. And that was including a church from West Virginia and a family from Texas. And I think there were a few other, small families from different places. So Next Step Ministries really opened it up to come as a church group or as a family. And so I'll tell you, we're still connected with some of the people that we met there. And it's really awesome to, you're going to the people in Guatemala. We also met some other people here in the States that we're able to stay connected with and talk to.
I tell you, that's awesome. And so I have just a quick question about, maybe testimonies and things like that. Have you been able to speak at any of your local churches or areas and kind of share a little bit about that? Or are you open to doing something like that if you were invited?
Yes, always. And we always report back. The little country church that I grew up in has financially supported us. And part of that deal is that we come back and share the trip with them. And so that will happen within the next few weeks as well. It's so close to our heart that we appreciate any opportunity that we have to share with others.
That would be great. I just wanted to make sure that we always share that with our listeners because, you never know how your testimony or what you share really could minister to someone, here that might, they might have that calling on their heart as well. And so I thank you again for sharing that. And then I know when we go on trips like this and we're in the ministry, no matter what aspect, there's always challenges. So what were some of the challenges that you faced being there?
We've actually, the two biggest challenges this past year, we've actually already mentioned. The language barrier. I know that Hannah had some Spanish in high school. I've had absolutely none. But a smile is a smile in any language, and we understand that. But the language barrier, and we always have interpreters nearby. But that's always a challenge for me, especially. And then this year, we actually went, Next Step sends teams down for 10 weeks. 1 week, each team goes for a week. The first 2 years we went down, we were the first team on the ground. But this summer, we were actually the last team down there. And apparently it was their rainy season. So we did have to fight showers each day. Some days more than others, but even though it was an aggravation to us, a barrier, and I'm the type that likes hands-on, get things done, like Hannah earlier, it actually gave us more time to spend connecting with the families and forming relationships with them. So the weather, the rain, and the language barrier, I think, is something that will always give me problems.
Ken, I loved what you said about a smile just transcends. And I think that is so true. And even though there were challenges, it's amazing that you had some good and positive things come out of those. And so I want to talk about, what would you say are the positive things that have occurred over the last 4 years there?
Obviously there's so many, we could talk about it all day, but I'll just hit on the high ones. Like I mentioned earlier, the growth of the church, that's very important because we've gone out into the community and we've seen the need for people to be joining the church. And so I think it's very reassuring to see the church building grow. And it's growing for a reason, because it needs to be for the need of the community. So that is probably the main thing that we connect with, is the church. We also were talking about it earlier, just about seeing all the houses that have been built. This summer we actually built 14, like all through the summer. But we've built houses every summer. So, and it's all in the little town of Sumpongo. So when we return, we're able to see what was done in earlier in the summer or in past years. And so the city is very in poverty, and so seeing some positive changes happen every time we go is really encouraging to us.
Well, I tell you, when you said you built 14 houses, that's just amazing to me, that people come together and can have that kind of progress in that amount of time. So again, I'm just amazed that you were able to accomplish that. Now, I know a lot of times when we do these things that there are times that are very rewarding. What would you say was the most rewarding aspect of the mission for you both?
I think for me, at the end of the house builds, the church comes in and they do a dedication, a house dedication. And it's a very touching moment to see the families as the final product is presented to them. And it just tugs at your heart to know that what we still consider here in the United States as being basically block outhouses, storage buildings. It's such an improvement for them, going from a dirt floor and not only tin walls and tin roofs, but old, rusty, bent up tin with curtains for doors. Just seeing how their lives will be improved because of that is always a touching, impactful part for me.
I tell you, that's amazing that they do that at the end, as a celebration and a ceremony. And, it kind of reminds me, and I'm sure it's not even to the magnitude, but, I can see some of these shows where people's homes have been redone and remodeled and how much that means to them. So I can only imagine what someone in Guatemala, like you said, is so appreciative and so thankful. And so it kind of brings me to a close here. I want to find out if you and Hannah plan on returning to Guatemala. If you do, want to continue that mission in the future. Is there just anything on your heart, that you'd like to share as we get ready to close this evening?
We do plan on returning. I would love to go for many years and keep in touch. Something that's definitely laid on my heart, the woman that we built the house for, we asked her if we could come back and see her when we returned. She is actually right across the street from the church, and she was like, "Yeah, please do. Want to see you again." So she was very kind. I would say we did build some really good relationships with the people at our house. Just one more thing I want to add that really stuck out to me, probably my favorite parts. One of my favorite parts about the week. Our last day there, they actually asked us if we wanted to wear authentic clothing. So me and two of the other girls, they took back into one of the bedrooms and they dressed us in their night clothing. That was an amazing experience. That we all laughed and had a good time about it. But it was really something special. We were dirty. We'd been building the house the rest of the day, and they put their nicest clothes on us, and so it really meant a lot to us. And that was just kind of the final thing of concluding our time there and building, finishing our relationship with him. And so that was right before the house dedication, and that whole part was very, very special to all of us.
Well, I tell you, when you were talking about that, it's hard enough, that, when we try to share our clothing and things here, and to think about them offering you their best. I tell you, that must have really touched you at that time. And Ken, do you have anything else that you would like to add this evening? Anything else on your heart that you would like to share before we close?
Well, to answer your question, there's no doubt that we'll be back someday. They're special people, and doing God's work is special. And I remember the little church that I grew up in. On the front of the book, and each Sunday morning, under the picture of the church on the front cover, were the words, "Enter to worship, depart to serve." And it's taken me several years, but that's become very important to me.
Well, I say, Ken, I love that. I absolutely love what you just shared, both of you. And I can tell the emotion in your voice. And that makes me know that yours and Hannah's heart is so pure. And it has been such a joy, such a pleasure to have both of you on this evening to share your heart. And I tell you, we will actually provide the information if anyone wants to reach out to me again at Heart of the Matter, WYTV7@gmail.com. I'll be glad to share the contact information and help you get in touch with Ken and Hannah. If you'd like to have them, at your church, or, some type of involvement there, or find out any details about how maybe you can be involved in a mission trip. So thank you both again so much. It's great to see you both. And again, my pleasure. And I hope you have a great evening. I want to leave our listeners with a prayer of love, a prayer of favor, and know that God loves you. And we'll all be glad to assist you, talk with you in any way. If you don't know Jesus as your personal Savior, we'll be glad to share that with you and share our heart. Thank you for being a part of our broadcast. Thank you to our listeners. Have a good evening. I'm Sonya Harder with Heart of the Matter.